When I was born, the doctor delivered me, handed me to my mom, and said, "Cindy, you've got a big-boned boy." Now, there's no such thing as being big-boned, but just for the record, my first moments on this planet, I was identified as being big. And within my first 6 months of life, as you can see, go ahead, get them out of your system. I had my first full-blown label, C-H-U-N-K, chunk. And let me tell you something. The labels, they did not stop there. I've heard chunk, chubby, tubby, fatty, thickness, pork chop, Dairy Queen, Happy Chef, big guy, big dog, and my personal favorite, Marty, you're not fat, you're just fluffy. Now, those were always the words that the world threw back at me when I was trying to find my place in the world. Therefore, this is how I always saw myself. Those are my license plates that I had for 6 years, and I drove around with those puppies. But more than that, and certainly longer than that, I have been struggling, trapped inside of my big guy identity. I remember the first time that I learned that it's not okay to be fat. I was in 4th grade, and I was playing soccer out on the playground, and I slipped and I fell into mud, and I had mud caked all over the side of my body. And as I lined up to go back into the school that day, there was a kid that peeked over the class and said, "Marty, why don't you go home and take a shower, you fat effing pig?" And it just crushed me. I couldn't understand. Why am I being made fun of? Why am I different? Why am I bad? That day fundamentally changed me. It was that day with tears running down my 10-year-old little face that I vowed never to ever be hurt again because of my weight. So what did I decide to do? I decided to celebrate it. After all, if all you're really hearing in life is chunk, chubby, and fluffy coming back your direction, you start to believe it. Oh, and I did. I owned it. It was that day I just felt so terrible and ashamed of myself. You know, I've been called so many names my whole life. I remember there were times where I was up to bat playing Little League baseball, and people in the stands and my teammates would chant, "Shamu, Shamu, Shamu." I remember going on bike rides, and there were people who would pull up next to me in their car, get real slow just to roll down their window to call me a heifer. I remember hearing adults talk about other adults and make fun of them for being fat. And I'm sitting in the same car, and I'm sitting here thinking to myself, well, they must think really lowly of me because I'm overweight too. My whole life, I have heard the same collection of words define who I am. And those words always reminded me of a part of myself that I hated. How would you like to be reminded day in, day out, everywhere that you went, of something about you that you hate? I remember always feeling less than everybody else. Like there's nothing special about me at all. Ironically, I was often the largest person in the room, yet I felt invisible. All I ever really saw in myself is what the world was constantly echoing back. He's just the fat guy. I felt so isolated, and I felt so ashamed. I now know that I'm not the only one to feel this way. 1 year ago, this very day was the last chance I had to spend with my older brother alive. 11 months ago, my older brother, Mark, my personal hero, he tragically took his own life. And about 2 months after his death, I received an email from his coworkers to find out that he had been privately keeping a journal at his work, and they sent it to me. It was a 10-page journal, and it documented experience after experience of him being ashamed of being overweight and the torture that he went through as a kid. He referred to himself as fat 45 different times. And he had a line in there that I'll never forget because it's permanently etched in my memory. He said, all around you in life continues a persistent feedback loop that reminds you that you're less than, you have very little to offer, and who would want you. And that message is internal, and that message is external. I remember reading that journal on that day and thinking to myself, my gosh, for the first time in my life, I'm learning that my brother and I shared the exact same pain. His pain, it took him to a really, really dark place. But my pain, on the other hand, it's brought me to the TED stage. Despite all of my experience and all of the rough times, I do stand before you today a success story. How did I change my life, you might be wondering? Well, it wasn't therapy that changed my life. No, no, no. It was a television game show. 10 years ago, I was selected to participate in a reality television show called The Biggest Loser. And a magical thing happened on The Biggest Loser. It was The Biggest Loser that for the first time in my life challenged me not to accept the chubby guy identity. It was The Biggest Loser that put me in a culture where they encouraged me to look within myself for my self-worth rather than listen to what the world was constantly telling me. I learned that the world, they want to keep you categorized. The world wants to keep you in this nice box with this pretty label on it because it's easier for the world to understand, but people aren't that simple. And I am not that simple. I learned on The Biggest Loser that there is so much more to me than weight. I learned to love myself. And that's what I call success. Why am I opening up today? Because there are millions of people out there, like my brother and me, struggling with the same script. I'm different, I'm ashamed, I'm worthless, and it leads to the same scary destination, isolation and self-hatred. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but your words, they've always broken my heart. Let's face it. Labels are weapons that can destroy lives. Simplifying somebody else's existence because you refuse to see them as more than their exterior, now that's just downright lazy. Yet, it's the overweight who commonly get labeled lazy. We're better than this. We're so much better than this. 5 years ago, I opened up a health club called Square One. It's a health club for people of size. It's for big people like my brother and me, struggling to find their identity, struggling to learn how to love themselves. I work every day, day in and day out, to unravel the cycle of self-torment that has been placed on my population. And I'm here today to tell you the revolution has begun. Now it's time for everybody to listen to my words. Today, I must challenge human beings to connect with each other. We have to fight our natural human impulses to want to judge and label and classify each other. Human interaction is so precious, and when life gets boiled down, it really is all we have. And within each one of those interactions we have with one another, we hold such tremendous power. We hold the power to uplift someone, and we hold the power to destroy someone. You know, when I see somebody overweight, I feel it's my sense of duty to look them in the eyes, to acknowledge them, to see past the weight, to find the beauty within. And I know with every look I send their direction and every word that I choose to use, I am casting a vote to label them or to acknowledge them, to disconnect or to connect. Let's fight human nature. We can do this. Let's choose connection. Thank you.